We're here to talk about the Silicon Valley real estate market, week number 34. I'm Richard Calhoun, Creekside Realty, 40 years plus of working here in Silicon Valley with buyers and sellers. The slides that are flashing behind you on the screen are the ones that we're going to be going over in the next roughly 35 minutes. One of the things I want to talk about real quickly was a Mercury News article this last week about the impact of interest rates and the decrease in median sale price. Out of the last 10 years, ignoring 2020 because of COVID, that leaves 9 years. They did 5 counties, so that gives you 45-year counties. Out of the last 45, 42 of them went down from June to July. A downward price from June to July is absolutely normal. You can almost bet, only 3 out of 45 times did it not go down. It has nothing to do with the interest rates. The other problem with the interest rates at 7.5% is a reasonably current thing in mid-August of 2023. If you're looking at sales back that closed back in June, those were negotiated back in May. So interest rates in August had nothing to do with sales activity in May and June. Anyway, enough with that article. Here is a summary of the heat maps we'll be going over to. We'll do this at the end. Here is the first heat map. This is the active inventory. I'm comparing it to the 10-year median. A lack of inventory, it favors the seller. There's less choice for the buyers, therefore more competition. You can see the bulk of San Mateo County and Santa Clara County has a shortage of inventory, especially Santa Clara County. You can see the actual percentages over here for the different micro-market areas. The least is 35%, so only 1/3 the inventory you'd expect in Milpitas, North Valley, Berryessa, and Santa Teresa. The most inventory is in the expensive areas where you have 105% of the expected level of inventory. Flipping over and looking at the number of offers, we also have a lack of the number of offers, which favors the buyer. And here again are the percentages. You can see that Santa Clara County and San Mateo County are mostly blue, all indicating a lack of offers. Here the range, the lowest I'm seeing is actually 41% in the San Mateo County coast, and the high I'm seeing is in Cupertino, Sunnyvale, which actually is having slightly more than the average number of offers accepted, 107%. Now you're looking at the ratio between the two, days of unsold inventory. Days of unsold inventory is a theoretical number of how quickly you would sell all the existing inventory at the existing rate of sales. Here you can see you're pretty balanced. San Mateo County's got a fair amount of blue. Santa Clara County's got a fair amount of red. The ranges here are from basically the lowest I'm seeing real quick is 73%, and the high I'm seeing is 165%. So you can see it straddles on both sides of 100 by quite a bit. Some areas, mostly in Santa Clara County, are below 100%. Most areas in San Mateo County are above 100%, indicating a slower marketplace, which favors the buyers. Now we're getting rid of comparing for the last 10 years, and that's to give you a benchmark of what the numbers sort of mean based on what the real estate market's been doing. In the past 10 years, for the most part, have been strong marketplaces, so keep that in mind. Now we're looking at absolute raw numbers. These are the different DUI for the areas. DUI is days of unsold inventory. The fastest area I'm picking up on right off the bat is Cupertino, Sunnyvale at only 17 days. So that means if no new listings came on the market, everything would sell out in 17 days. The slowest area I'm seeing is the expensive areas in San Mateo County at 127 days. Most of the areas, in say Alameda County are right around 3 weeks. Santa Clara County is a little bit more diverse, but maybe under 4 weeks, probably also 3 weeks. It's just a little bit more spread out. San Mateo County is really spread out, anywhere from 4 weeks for the Bay Cities up to 127 days. I don't even know how many weeks that is. That's something like 15, it's over 15 weeks. It's more like almost 20 weeks, I guess. It's a little less than 20 weeks, 18 weeks, something like that. Now for those that are having trouble following those numbers, we're looking at days on the marketplace. And instead of looking at the median, which is a very stable number and it takes step functions, so you don't see shifts in the marketplace, I'm looking at the 75th percentile. This is very similar to the average, but it eliminates the disadvantage that the average has, which is if one person sells after being on the market for 2 years, that really brings up your average days on the market, where it has almost no impact on the 75th percentile. In Santa Clara County, 75% of the sellers are able to sell their home in basically 2 weeks. Quickest areas in Cupertino, Sunnyvale at 12 days. The longest sort of is East San Jose, Central San Jose, South San Jose at 16. But then you clearly have exceptions. South County is at 25, Saratoga Las Gatos is at 21, Los Altos Palo Alto at 21. Alameda County is very similar, maybe even more closely grouped around 2 weeks. San Mateo County is again really spread out, anywhere from 3 weeks. Well, I guess Redwood City is actually at 2 weeks. North San Mateo County at 3 weeks. Foster City at 4 weeks. But then you get up to the expensive areas at 86 days. So that's 12 weeks. So that's getting to be a long time. There is definitely a difference between being on the market for 12 weeks and being on the market for 2 weeks. But you can see the vast majority of the areas, the vast majority of the people are looking in, the market is actually fairly quick. 75% of the sellers, in a nutshell, are able to sell their home in about 2 week time frame. Now we're looking at the average ask price adjustments. This is what the seller does to their asking price in order to get the offer accepted. This is a very tight criteria because sellers do a lot of homework before they put their house on the marketplace. But it's also an extremely useful metric because you don't have to wait until escrow's closed to find out what's happening. And you can see there's quite a bit of range. You go to the San Mateo County coast and sellers are taking a 2% price reduction. Now, again, that may sound like not a lot, but again, it's a solid blue. And the reason it doesn't sound like a lot is 90% of the sellers probably aren't making any adjustment, which means in that particular area, if that was the scenario, the 10% that are taking the price reductions are taking a 20% price reduction. When you look at only those that are taking the price reduction, it becomes significant. You can see in Union City and Newark, they actually are raising their price. And I went into details on last week on how this happens. It does occasionally happen, but it's rare that you go up 1.4%, and that's why it goes saturated even a 1/10% above the 100%. Now you're looking at the frequency of sellers reducing their asking price. How common are sellers reducing their ask price? And you go to Foster City, and in the last 5 weeks, and this is of offers accepted, not a single seller reduced their asking price. Then you go up to the San Mateo coast, and it's 1 out of 5. So my example was a little bit off. I used 10%. So if 20% of the sellers reduced their sale price, those 20% are reducing it by about 10%, which is still pretty significant in real estate. Now we're looking at overbids. Overbids are flip over and look at what the buyers are doing. This is what the buyers do to try to get their offer accepted. The huge disadvantage of this is activity that happened 5 to 12 weeks ago for the most part. So it's historical data almost. It's not current. What is the market doing today? And you can see the range is fairly significant. You go down to Berkeley and Oakland at the bottom of the table over here on the right, and you got 17% and 12%. Buyers are overbidding 15 and 10% above asking price. You go up to the expensive areas in Atherton, they're negotiating the price down by 3.3%. The coast almost 2%, 1.7%. So you can see there's quite a bit of range. Santa Clara County is probably right around 7% would be a quick number. Or Alameda County is probably around 6%. San Mateo County is probably around 4 or 5%. Those are just rough numbers. The heat map sort of gives you an idea. You can see that San Mateo County is a paler pink than Alameda, and Alameda appears to be a paler pink than Santa Clara County. Now we're looking at the frequency. That was the magnitude. How much are buyers overpaying? Now this is how frequently are buyers overbidding. And you can see in Santa Clara County, it's right around 0.75%. It's probably right around 0.75% in Alameda County. But in San Mateo County, it's all over the board. You go from only 20% to a high of 60%. Maybe it's around 50% if you blended the whole county together. And this is why it's so important to look at micro-market data. If you take 20% in Atherton and 30% in San Mateo County and average it into Redwood City at 60%, that really pulls down the 60%. And if this was in Santa Clara County, it would have an even more dramatic impact because you're going from 20% to everybody else at 3/4. And that's why you look at micro-market. And you got to be careful because you can't go too far down. like at the zip code level, each one of my micro market areas have multiple zip codes. So even if you get down to the zip code level, your database is so small that you have statistical fluctuation more than you have market data indicators. And we've seen that in a few examples, like in Foster City, Redwood Shores, where the data jumps around all over the place, and yet that's multiple zip codes. I think it's 2 zip codes. Now we're looking over at the appreciation, and we're looking at the appreciation long term. The base period is the last 9 months, so second, third, and fourth quarter of 2015. You can see the different areas. The highest areas are right around 90% appreciation. There is the exception that, again, I think it was just last week I went into the expensive areas in San Mateo County. Even though they're doing poorly right now as far as the speed of the marketplace, they have had the most appreciation. But when I dug into it, it's because the median price right now, which is what the appreciation is based on, happens to be high based on what's sold. So it's not really that they've had property values go up 121%. It's just right now it's a sort of a shift of that micro market towards more expensive units selling. So those more expensive units selling raises the median price, which increases the appreciation. That again is one of the reasons why the micro markets are important. The more homogeneous your micro market is, and the bigger the micro market area is, the more stable it is, and the more indicative median price shifts are of property values. When you're talking about a county like, say, Santa Clara County, you can have huge shifts where all of a sudden Los Altos, Palo Alto is in place to buy and really aggressive and making up a huge percentage of the market share. And then another time of the year, it's making up a very small market percentage of the market share. And because it's more expensive area, that would pull the median price down when the market shift of those expensive areas went down. Here is the price that a lot of people like to follow. The middle number is the median. The number to the left is the 10 percentile, and the number to the right is the 90 percentile. You know 80% of the homes are between the two. You know 40% are between 911 and 1.2, and 40% of the homes are between 1.2 and 1.9. But it sort of sandwiches you so you can go down and see what the price range is of the different areas. And since we were talking about it earlier, you can see the median price right now in the expensive areas in San Mateo County is $6,300,000. So here is a summary chart of what we just went over. You can start on the left on the micro market areas and see what the conditions are, or you can start on the right with your monthly payments that have not been shown before in a previous slide, or in the sold price range, and then work backwards from right to left and look at the micro market conditions. But you can start seeing the expensive areas in the coast in San Mateo County are pretty blue, which is basically favoring the buyer. You can really see that even though the expensive areas is blue in every area, it's red in both the price and the appreciation, and that's again because of just the mix of what has sold recently. Now what we're looking at is the 3 components of all Silicon Valley. So we're leaving behind the individual micro markets. Now we're looking at Silicon Valley as a whole, what's happening sort of more globally. This would be all of Santa Clara County, all of San Mateo County, and all of Alameda County. We're looking at the 3 components: inventory, offers accepted, and then DUI. Inventory accepted is the purple line. Basically, that's like 67.2%. You're looking at offers accepted, that's something like 67.3%. DUI is 89%. This table I've been putting up here to show the historical record low volume of sales, and I'll be the first one to point out we're no longer record low. We're the 24th lowest number of transactions, with the lowest being 1,764, so we're 3% above the lowest, and the previous lowest was in 2007. Now we're at 1,818 transactions, so just a little bit over 1,800 transactions versus 1,760 before. 3% improvement, but still clearly on the low side when you're only, it's the 24th lowest out of the last 25 years. That says it all right there. Here's looking at the estimated payments. You can see for many years, even though we had price appreciation because we had interest rates going down, we had flat mortgage payments. The mortgage payment for the 10 percentile home, the median price, and the 90% home. It wasn't until 2021 that we started having slight price inclines. Then 2022 we had some more, and in 2023 we're having even a steeper rise, and that's because of the increasing interest rates. But one of the things that was really interesting is, when the market was collapsing in the second quarter of 2022, it was collapsing so much the payments were actually going down. It was not a payment driven collapse of the marketplace. We're looking at a year worth of slides. We're looking at the seller's ask price reduction. We're starting a year ago. We're going to do months, so 11 months, 10 months, 9 months, all the way up to 3 months. And at 3 months, we shift to 12 weeks and then go every week. And what you can see as you go up and to the left, that's an improving marketplace. So as you go up to get into this red box, it's an improving marketplace. As you get down into the blue box, it's a decreasing marketplace. The dashed blue line is the worst week or month we ever had, worst distribution we ever had, and the red dotted line up here right at 100% is the best we ever had. That will step through. You can see it improved and then went down. Now it's improving dramatically. That says the change of the year. There's the peak. And now you can see we're coming down a little bit, but not dramatic, and we're fairly stable the last several weeks. That was a jump up, obviously. And now that's the current week. And the current week, I call it +1 because it's only 3 out of 7 days. I use a real estate fiscal year for doing my data. It gets rid of a lot of the cyclic nature of the data. So my real estate fiscal year for statistics starts on March 1st of every year and then goes forward in increments of 7 days. And from whatever day that is, I look backwards 5 weeks. And the reason I do the increment on March 1st is some years you have 29 days in February, and some days you only have 28. So you have a discontinuity of either 1 or 2 days depending on whether it's a not standard year or a leap year. Now we're flipping over and looking at the same thing. We're looking at buyers overbidding. Here, going up and to the right is an improving marketplace. Same concept, red line best, blue line worse. We'll start off at a month, and you can see it's a pretty stable index. There's about the bottom of the market. Now you're improving, and now we're sort of at the peak of the marketplace. So even right there's the peak. Right there's the peak. So you can see that even though we peaked and came down a little bit, it hasn't come down very much. But again, remember the peak of the sale per overbid is 5-6 weeks earlier because of the length of escrow closings. Now we're looking at inventory compared to the 10-year median. So this is the 10-year 10 percentile. So this is the least inventory you'd expect based on the past 10 years. The gray line is exactly the inventory you'd expect to have based on the last 10 years. And the blue inventory is the most inventory you'd expect. What is noteworthy, I think, is basically all three normally are rolling over, and there's really no indication that the inventory has rolled over yet this year. Now, you might argue that it appears to be at a plateau, and that very well may be. It will probably go down next week because of the holiday coming up, Labor Day. Now we're looking at the number of offers accepted over the past 5 weeks. So same concept, the fewest offers you expect is up here at 2250. The typical you'd expect is 2680. The most you'd expect is 2965. We're down here at 1818. We're selling far fewer homes than you'd expect. We're selling basically 450 fewer homes than you expect, or 430 fewer homes than you'd expect. This is looking at days of unsold inventory. Same concept. In a hot marketplace, you'd be expecting at 26. In a normal marketplace, you'd expect at 41. In a cool marketplace, you'd expect at 46. Now, not too long ago, we were in the center, halfway between the 10 percentile and the 50 percentile, the fastest you'd expect and exactly what you'd expect. And now we're getting much closer to what you'd expect versus a hot marketplace. I mean, there's 11 days going from the 10 percentile to where we are, and only 4 days going from where we are to the typical. You're still faster than you typically are at this time of the year, but you're getting closer to the typical marketplace. What that means is the market is slowing down more rapidly than it normally slows down at this time of the year. You can see that all these indicators are typically climbing, and we're climbing, but since we're catching the gray line, we're climbing a little bit more. And part of the reason for that is in a hot year, the market's actually improving. Here's where you look at compared to a percentage of normal. So we're at 90% of where you'd expect DUI to typically be. So you're 10% faster marketplace. Now, days on marketplace, slightly different metric, slightly different result, but consistent in my opinion. The fastest you'd expect is 19. We're right now at 20 days. The typical is 24, and the slowest you'd expect is 31. So this is how long it would take the long typical, the 75th percentile seller to sell. And now you're clearly closer to the hot marketplace. You're only 1 day off of the 10 percentile, and you're 4 days away from the typical marketplace. So you can see you're 85% of where the seller sells. So the seller's selling 15% faster. But again, remember that was only 1 day. Here is looking at the average ask price reduction. So you can see that the biggest reductions you expect is only 1.8%. You can see the typical is 99.2, and you can see the purple is also 99.2, although a little bit lower 99.2. Just when you round up to only 1 decimal point, they're the same number, but if I went out 3 or 4 decimal places, there would be a difference, but the data is meaningless that far out. And you can see that typically, even in a hot marketplace, at this time of the year, the sellers are taking a 0.5% reduction. Again, that's not, they're taking a 0.5% reduction. It's a very small percent of the sellers are taking a very small reduction, so averaged across everybody, it's a 0.5%. To give you a different look at it, this is the sellers that are taking the biggest 10% discount. So in a cool marketplace, 10% of the sellers are normally taking or not normally, but in a cold marketplace, are taking a 14% reduction. Right now, they're taking a 10.7% reduction. In a normal marketplace, they're taking a 10.4%. So very, very close to a normal marketplace. And in a hot marketplace, the sellers that are taking the biggest price reductions are taking a 9.6%. So you can see that 10% of the sellers do take price reductions that are significant, but when you average that over the 90% for the most part that aren't doing price reductions, it becomes a very tight criteria. Here you can see this price reductions are 3% higher than they normally are. Frequency of price reductions, you can see that they're very infrequent. So right now, even though it's not labeled, about 12% of the sellers are taking a price reduction, which is exactly where you'd expect it to be, because you can see the purple line and the red line are on top of one another, and it is interesting how rapidly that 10 percentile is going up. In a typical marketplace, 16% of the sellers are taking a price reduction, and in a cool marketplace, 25% of the sellers, or 26%, are doing a price reduction. So right now, compared to normal, sellers are only taking 74% fewer sellers are taking a price reduction than normal. Here's the overbid. So in a hot, cool marketplace, buyers overbid by 3%. In a typical marketplace, they overbid by 5%. Right now, we're overbidding by 6%, so a little bit hotter than normal, and that's almost halfway up, because in a hot marketplace at this time of the year, the overbid is only 7%. That's average. It's not even median, because this includes those that go in below asking price. This is how common is overbidding. Cool marketplace, just over 50%. Typical marketplace, right around 2/3, which is essentially where we are. We're a little bit higher than normal. 64.6 is normal. We're currently at 66.6. And in a hot marketplace, we're up around 75% of the sellers are getting more than their asking price. Here's the long-term appreciation. You can see we're at 1,560,000 for all of Silicon Valley. This is on log paper, so you can start seeing the rate of appreciation. When you're below the slanted blue line, you would expect prices to increase because you're below the typical appreciation, but you can see that you had years where we were way above, and then you had a short period of time right around the end of this past year, 2022 into 2023, we were quite a bit below. In fact, probably some of the biggest below in the whole history, because this is on log paper, so this vertical distance is more than this. So this is the biggest decrease below the line that we had. Here's your active inventory. So this is current inventory that's available. And then now we're breaking it up into the 3 counties. We started off looking at the micro markets, then we looked at Silicon Valley as a whole, and now what we're doing is looking at county-wide data to try to compare this a little bit more to conventional media reporting. You can see San Mateo County at 445 listings is about where you'd expect it to be. Santa Clara County at 684 is quite a bit below, and Alameda County at 788 is quite a bit below. So you can see the inventory is growing in all 3 counties individually, but you can also see that except for San Mateo, inventory is down quite a bit from where you'd expect it to be. We're approaching the beginning of the 4th quarter, which would be October 1st. We're about a month away from that. If you come back here, you can see inventory is typically up here somewhere, maybe 1,500. So you have roughly half the inventory you normally do. Same concept looked over at offers accepted. Here, San Mateo County at 346 has less number of offers than it typically does. With this typical number of active listings, that gives you the slower marketplace that we saw for San Mateo County, which is why DUI was blue in some areas, or just at least a fainter color of pink. You can see Santa Clara County is at 729 and Alameda County is at 759, down quite a bit from where they typically are. Maybe they're around 1,100 typically, and now they're 700. Can't do my math that quickly on the fly, but it's a 30% or so reduction. Days on unsold inventory, you can see San Mateo County is climbing pretty rapidly. All 3 counties have been climbing, but 33 days for Santa Clara County is still a fairly fast marketplace. I consider 40 to 80 to be a balanced marketplace, so this would still be a seller's marketplace. Alameda County at 36, same category. San Mateo County would definitely be in that low end of the balanced marketplace at 45. It's above 40. Time to sell on the marketplace, the 75th percentile. It is interesting that even though DUI is increasing, days on marketplace are decreasing. So it depends again how you interpret the data, what it means, but each of these data points, in my opinion, is significant and means slightly different things. Santa Clara County, 75% of the sellers are selling in 2 weeks, 14 days. Alameda County, 17 days, 2.5 weeks. In Alameda County, you're at 27, call it 28, and that gives you basically a full 4 weeks. So San Mateo County is clearly taking longer to sell than either Santa Clara or Alameda. Price reductions, and this is the seller's price reductions at the time the offers are accepted. You can see that San Mateo County is taking the biggest price reductions at 1.4%, followed by Alameda County at 0.7%, and finally Santa Clara County at 0.6%. Here's the ask price reduction frequency. So how common is price reductions? Santa Clara County, 10% of the sellers are doing price reductions. Alameda County, 11%. And in San Mateo County, 14%. And look at the rapid increase, the rapid decrease, and the rapid rebound. That's what happens when you start having small data sets. And remember, I think the data set was somewhere around 354. So despite having 354 offers, you're still having what I would call a fair amount of bounce. That statistical bounce increases as your data size decreases, which is why I don't do anything on the zip code level. I think you end up with too much market bouncing. But a counter argument is when your 3 counties are basically doing the same pattern, way up, way down, way up, that may actually be reflective of what the market's doing. Here's the overbid magnitude. This is looking at the sale price to list price ratio, and this is the average. So this is all the people, including the ones who went below asking price, those that went over. San Mateo County, 2.6%. Santa Clara County, 5.3% above. And Alameda County doing the best at 8.2% above the seller's asking price. Frequency of overbidding: San Mateo County, only 50% of the sellers getting more than their asking price. Santa Clara County, it's 2/3. And in Alameda County, it's basically 70%. Here's the appreciation. You can see that before COVID, all three counties basically appreciated the same rate. Since COVID, San Mateo County has been doing the least well. Santa Clara County has been doing the best. So right now, since 2015, the last 9 months, Santa Clara County has gone up 87%. Alameda County has gone up 70%, and San Mateo County has gone up 65%. You can see there's been some sort of a separation now, and maybe Silicon Valley is that happy median where you get a little bit more house for your money, but your commute into work is still reasonable. Here's your sold price. This is on log scale. What's interesting in my opinion is if you look at San Mateo County, it's basically right to where pricing was in the middle to latter part of 2021. Same Alameda County. But look at Santa Clara County. It's quite a bit above that same plateau of 2021. Santa Clara County is appreciated more, which is why in the previous chart it had the highest rate. This is the same information on regular paper for those that prefer. Here's rough estimates of what the payments are. A lot of assumptions go into this, like interest rate coming out of the Federal Reserve, jumbo rate, 80% loan, assumed insurance premium payment and things like that. There's lots of ways to get better interest rates. If you have a lot of assets, even if they're in a 401k, a lot of programs, lenders offer a discount where you transfer money in to their institution. They'll give you a lower interest rate on your 30-year mortgage. Here's the actual data for each one of the different counties. One of the things that just jumped out at me is look at the increase in inventory in the past week. We're going back 5 weeks. So we're going back to, I think it's about July 22nd roughly. And then the week before would have been July 14th. You're really not talking about a holiday or anything like that that's impacting this, but yet you had a 16% increase in inventory. And this is in inventory, this is new listing. In the last 5 weeks, ending midnight last night, you had 16% more listings come on the market than the 5 weeks that ended midnight a week ago. Santa Clara County 13%, Alameda County 4%, so even Alameda County went up. Overall, Silicon Valley saw almost a 10% increase in the number of new listings. If we had been dropping off 4th of July, I could explain that. So this actually caught me by surprise, this rapid growth of inventory. Now, it may be as simple as people are racing to put their house on the market this weekend to avoid Labor Day next weekend, which is a very strong possibility. But this is something to pay attention to. I do expect it to drop next week because of the holiday that's pending. Inventory has basically been fairly steady. Alameda County is actually down, San Mateo County is up, Santa Clara County is basically flat. You can pick what numbers of interest to you and look at it. Now we're leaving Silicon Valley and looking at the Greater Bay Area. So this is now including 13 counties. We add in the cities, San Francisco and Marin. We add in the North Bay. We add in the Central Valley, and we add in the Central Coast. We're starting off with the raw numbers, so you can pick whatever is important to you. You can see DUI is low in the Silicon Valley area, but you get up in San Francisco, 100 days, 77 Marin. So even though it's the Greater Bay Area, we're really spoiled when you start looking within Silicon Valley area. We're much faster than the area. The close on the heels is Central Valley. That's the affordable area that people are commuting into now with remote work, and we'll see that coming up. We talked about the drop in inventory here in Silicon Valley, 1,912 down maybe from some number around 3,000, so a pretty significant drop. But look at the drop in both the Central Valley and the North Bay. Pick any number you want, maybe 4,500, and now you're down at 2,200. And in the Central Valley is the bigger one at 17. So the Central Valley's got only about 1/3 the inventory that it typically has. And Central Coast and The cities is more constant, but has also seen a decrease in inventory. So the regions are, all 5 regions are seeing a decrease in inventory. Here's looking at the number of offers accepted. Look at the drop in the North Bay offers. I mean, you went from here, some number close to 1,800, down to 1,300, and call it even 1,400. So you've had a drop of 400 offers accepted over the past 5 weeks, just very rapidly. You're also seeing a fairly significant drop in the cities area. We're down to 205 offers accepted in the past 5 weeks. That's only 40 transactions a week. Silicon Valley is up here at 1818, which we talked about earlier, is no longer a historical low, but it's the 24th lowest out of the last 25 years. Days of unsold inventory, look at the cities, 90 days up here, Central Coast at 57. Looks like even the North Bay's at 57, but now you come down to Silicon Valley and the Central Valley. Silicon Valley is beating it out a little bit at 37. Central Valley is very close to 39, or is 39, so very close to Silicon Valley. You can see there's a huge difference between what the Central Valley and Silicon Valley are experiencing versus anybody else. Here's this marketing time. Silicon Valley is doing the best at 20. Central Valley is next at 26, so a week longer, 3 to 4 weeks. But now you're get up to 5 weeks for the North Bay. You get up to 5 weeks for the North Bay, 5 weeks for the Central Coast, and you're approaching 6 weeks for the city. This is the ask price reductions that the sellers do. Look at the Central Coast, how it's, well, all the areas are just dropping off in the last couple weeks. Sellers are feeling the pressure to take bigger price reductions to get that offer accepted. You know, they're not huge amounts. 97%, is only it's only a 2.2% reduction, but it's still a reduction. And when you do your homework and if you advertise that over only 10%, that's a 20% price reduction. It may turn out like it did before, where it's actually 20% of the sellers are doing a 10% price reduction. This is the frequency of the price reduction, and it's a good thing I caught it, because here you are in Central Coast, it's almost 30%. So 30% and seeing a 2.2% price reduction. So that's the average seller taking 7% price reduction. So 30% of the sellers in the Central Coast are taking a 7% price reduction, would be one way to get these numbers to work out. Come down here to Silicon Valley, it's only 12%. So you can see the sellers doing price reductions in Silicon Valley is far less than the other greater regions, the 5 other regions. You can see the 5 other regions have really been climbing. The Silicon Valley has been fairly flat. And Silicon Valley, again, is Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, and Alameda County. Here's the overbidding for the different areas. The area that has the most overbidding is Silicon Valley at 6% over ask price. Even though the cities has a very long marketing time, I think it was 99 days, it's got almost a 4% overbid. North Bay only has a 1.8% overbid. Central Valley has a 1.1. And you might say, wow, why is that? My hypothesis is, even though the market's as fast out in Central Valley, people that are going out there for affordability issues, and therefore, even though they may overbid as frequency and move quickly, the amount of their overbidding could be restricted by their financial package, and therefore it's keeping the magnitude of overbidding only at 1.1%. And then finally, the Central Coast comes in at only 0.2% above the seller's asking price. This is the frequency of overbidding. Starting at the bottom, Central Coast, only 40% of the sellers get more than the asking price. 3 of the regions are really close to 55%, and Silicon Valley leads the pack with 2/3 of the sellers getting more than their asking price. This is the total appreciation. Look at the cities. We talked about San Mateo County doing the worst in Silicon Valley, but look at the cities. And again, before the pandemic, all the areas were doing roughly the same, were grouped together. We hit the pandemic, and the cities just fell out the bottom, And then in recent time, look at the yellow at the top, Central Valley. So you can see there's been definitely a shift caused by the pandemic and remote working. Here's the sold price in the different areas. You can see that for Silicon Valley crossed over and it has a higher median price now than the cities. Almost set, well, it is 70,000, 1570 versus 1500. You can see the Central Coast is at $1,060,000. The North Bay is at 800,000, and the Central Valley is still fairly affordable at under 550,000 as the median sold price. Here's the estimated payments for the different areas, and because Silicon Valley has the higher sale price now, it's got the higher monthly mortgage payment. And with that, I've got to the end. This is a chart on how you get to everything. The green is what I call my root URL. That's the YouTube archive. If you go to the handout, which is posted, you add in the letter H, 2023-08-26, and I did get that up about 5 minutes early today, and any specific episode. See if anyone has any questions for me. Not seeing any unmuted mics. I'll call it a day and have a nice week, everybody. Bye for now.